Okay, so we are live. I am here with Cassandra for another live stream. We got a really great topic today. It's going to challenge me a little bit because it's a little bit out of my area of expertise, but we're going to give it our best shot. So, Cassandra, welcome. Thanks for taking up this challenge. How are you feeling?
Pretty good, pretty good. I know my name is spelled Cassandra, but I do pronounce it Cassandra. Um,
Cassandra. Okay, try to remember that.
I appreciate it. I'm sorry I didn't clarify before.
No problem. All right, so Cassandra, give me, so you want to talk about the big thing is, well, let's talk about kids first. We'll talk about kids because you brought that up, and then we can move into the workplace. So did I title this? I can't even remember if I titled this. I did. Okay, being feminine in the workplace. So so your first question is about being more feminine with your children, right?
Not necessarily with children. It's kind of like with being a single mom, I guess, and having to fulfill both roles, having to be the one that's the nurturer, but also okay, you're going to have to do this stuff, and being that strong leader as well, because you're kind of left to do it alone. And then how do you kind of step out of that mindset and allow a man to lead when ultimately it falls on your responsibility until you're in a committed relationship?
Okay, so that's a really fantastic question. So first thing, this is something I just really believe with children, and I've worked with children for a really long time. Most people don't give children anywhere near enough credit of what they're capable of and their ability to step into being responsible. And it's just really a matter of motivation. And it's especially true. Do you have boys or girls?
Girls.
Girls. Okay. How old?
1.5 old and just turned 4.
Okay, fantastic. It's beautiful. So it's especially true with boys, but with girls as well. And I only have 3 viewers this time. That's weird. What's going on? Doesn't even make sense. Whatever. In that they like so let's talk about boys first, right? Like boys really love actually stepping up for their mother, right? When she's actually able to be really feminine and vulnerable and not telling them what to do. And it's amazing. Like I've worked with women clients, like mothers, and their boys just will step up so quickly because we're programmed that way. Really, like men really are, or males really are programmed to want to step up and devote and take care of the feminine. And that's true even from a relatively young age. And you'll start to notice that increasingly as they get into their teenage years. And women, like mothers, will also notice if they continue to talk to their boys in their masculine, it's going to become increasingly difficult as they get older, and really not much better than talking to a man through their masculine, right? So, like I've had results with clients where, the kids will step up in a huge way and take so much off of a mother's plate, right? Especially the boys. And because they like doing it, right? It feels good for them to do it when they're not being asked in a masculine way. And it's for like girls as well to a large extent. And it's just amazing what what kids really, really are capable of. But the problem is that it requires such a huge degree of trust, right? Just like it does with a man. Like if you're with a man, where it's like you have to totally let go of control and just, you're operating on faith that they're going to want to step up, that they're going to want to get things done without you having to try to control everything. And, I've noticed this as a teacher and as a camp counselor. And what I've really noticed is that adults, for the most part, really don't trust children. They don't trust children to be responsible and step up. And I was never like that, right? I would just lean, like as a man, like I would lean way back and tell my kids that I'm working with my expectations. And then they would do an unbelievable job and be, even on camping trips, like my young boys, like 10, 11, 12-year-olds would be leading camping trips because they have to step up and do it, because I'm not going to do it. And I'm just letting them know, like, I know you're capable of this, right? So there's that piece, because if a woman, the more she feels like she really needs to control things in the household, control her kids, control her behavior, all that stuff, the more she's going to have to buckle down into that masculine energy and really get drained really quickly, which is just going to stress her out, stress out the children, and essentially cause them to not grow up, because they're being just like a, you can think of it just like a man, where it's like, what happens to a man when a woman's really controlling in that way? He's not going to grow up. He's actually going to revert more into a child most of the time. So that's the main thing I wanted to say about being a mother. And it's really a difficult thing, but it's an amazing trust building exercise in itself, right? It really is. Yeah. And have you experienced that in your life? Like as you've gotten into this work a bit and letting go of control, what's been your experience?
Absolutely. So my oldest her name is Karma, and her and I have had a beautiful relationship pretty much her whole life. She and I, it was just her and I for almost 6 years before I got married. I was married for 3. And then I've been single for another 3 now. And 2 years ago is when she started to really show her independence. And biologically, I know it's normal for around 10 to 13 for them to want to step out and test boundaries and try different things. And one thing that came up a lot of our talks was that she felt like I didn't trust her and that I was treating her like a baby. And I'm like, well, if you continue to break boundaries, then I have to give you less trust, less responsibility and such. But she wanted basically that trust. And once I was able to be like, okay, I can trust you this thing. Let's make this compromise. I'm trusting you on this. She was able to step up into that. And we do have certain, disagreements at times. I feel like because I am very type A, like, let's do this, let's get this done, like, this is what I'm asking, let's do it, you know what I mean? Where she is a lot more feminine, laid back. But something that I've tried to remember, something I was told about 2 years ago, was that you can't, as a parent, base your pride of your child on what they do. You can have pride in your children just for being who they are, regardless of what they choose to do. And it's, yes, some of it is a reflection on your parenting, but ultimately kids are going to do what they want to do. Adults are going to do what they want to do, regardless how they were raised. So by detaching that sense of responsibility or guilt if she didn't live up to a certain perfect expectation or what have you, it was very freeing, because then I was able to just love her and appreciate her and try to work with her where she was coming from to build that trust. And I really believe that we have, which I'm really thankful for, going into even more teenage years and needing to let go even more. I'm finding myself being easier and actually looking forward to that in many ways, because I want to see her blossom. I want to see her develop and to be successful on her own. And like I told her, I'm always going to be here for you. I'll always, have your back and support you however which way. But it's also encouraging to know she's not going to be one of those people that are dependent on their mom at 40 because they've never moved out of the house and, still will have them do their laundry and this, that, and the other. She has chores, she has responsibility. And I hate nagging on her. That's the one thing I feel like I could do even more of, finding better ways to encourage different things versus having to come into that masculine after 3 or 4 warnings. But I do see growth in that area, and I do see potential for more, for sure.
Nice. Now, here's something, I'm going to explain something that I'm actually not fully, so I know I'm 100% sure with boys. Mm-hmm. I'm actually, it's so far out of my expertise that I can't say this with confidence with girls, but I want to see single mothers experiment with this and just really see what's possible. So I know with clients with boys, right, like 8, 9, 10 and up, those clients have been able to do nothing except just express how they feel, right? Just like they would with a man, right? Like if their, let's say their boy does something that is really messed up and irresponsible, and she's able to actually really just get vulnerable with that feeling and say, like, I feel like I just had to tell you, like, I feel really anxious and like, honestly, like, really sad, whatever it is. And she's connected to her heart as she says it. So fully vulnerable. Boys will step up 100%. Right. And it's because of the program, right? We're programmed to take care of women, of the feminine in women. And that's really all that needs to be done. Like no boundaries, no like expectations, things like that. They really want to just essentially make their mother happy. And it's not about, pleasing in the sense of, getting approval. It's just they love making their woman, or sorry, not their woman, but their mother happy, just like a man would do, right? And so they're actually creating their own boundaries for themselves without any like a parent having to make those external boundaries for them to follow. They're the ones that make the boundaries, just like a man would with his woman, to try to protect her heart, right? So it's really fascinating. And because that wasn't really my area, but I wanted to, I had clients that were asking about it. So I'm like, okay, well, this makes sense. Let's see what happens. And so I don't have much feedback from mothers with girls yet, because there's a different program there. But I am really curious to see just how much a mother could let go of control and see. It's an experiment. Really, it is an experiment to a degree.
A couple of examples kind of came to mind as you were talking about that. My daughter is very empathetic. She is very water-based in her elements, where I'm very fire. So I'm already very naturally masculine. And I noticed that she tends to shy away when I'm in that masculine. But if I'm very vulnerable with her and explain things, she is more apt to be open and explaining her side, even if that means anger, frustration. There's been times she's told me about myself as a mom and just been like, look, this is what I don't like. And I'm able to then come to her and be like, I'm sorry, this is how you perceived it. This was my way. I'm trying, to not do those things that make you feel, a certain way that you have to retreat or you can't be open and everything. So I do see that being very true in that regard as well. I think because of our relationship, she's able to understand. And she does pick up on my emotions very easily. I had some very upsetting news a few days ago, and as soon as I came in the house, she's like, are you okay? And I was just like, okay, no, but I just need a minute, but she picks up on that very easily. So that might be a better approach going forward. I guess my confusion with that is, especially with correction of children, discipline of children, there has to be some natural consequences for behaviors that obviously continue that are inappropriate. And then as a single mom, there is no choice for her to be like, oh, I'm going to call your dad on you. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, there are times you do have to do that realistically, and moving throughout that is very challenging.
Yeah. And so the whole consequences thing is really interesting, because like the ultimate consequence for a child who's not a like sociopathic or like has very low empathy, right, is hurting someone that they care about, right? And so that's why vulnerability in a woman is so unbelievably powerful. And of course, I'm not talking just about saying the emotion, because saying the emotion can be a very headspace thing, right? But like I can even put myself into my 10-year-old self, 26 years ago, and think like, wow, if my mother was really vulnerable with me and just showed me her heart when I was doing something that was hurtful. Like I was often a rebel, right? And it's just like, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. And I certainly did that at school. And it might not have worked for like a teacher that I don't care about to be vulnerable, but I know that I care very much about my mother, right? And I love her very much. So the ultimate consequence for me would have been really hurting her, right? And so I like, that's really the only consequence that I would have needed to check my own behavior. But it's only going to work with children that can really feel that empathy. If they don't, or if they there's kids with, say, like kids that just don't really respond well to that, like it doesn't really affect them. They just kind of just like some men, right? Some men are just going to steamroll that and take advantage. There are some men out there that are like that. Just they're not wired that way. Obviously that's not going to work, but that's really the rare exception. And that's why I really want to see how far parents can take this, because that really is the ultimate consequence for anyone that really does feel empathy and really does care about their mother and how she feels.
Right.
But then, of course, this is the other part. It's got to be fully vulnerable. It's got to be fully emotionally responsible, because you can also think, and there might be some people watching this where it's like a lot of women don't know how to be emotionally responsible with their feelings, right? So they're going to dump it on their children, and that's going to cause a lot of problems, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing, we've talked a lot about using I feel statements and saying, you make me feel, or you did this. And it's like, taking ownership of how you feel yourself and what maybe sets you off. That is much more empowering too, because then you could check yourself. If somebody continues doing something, eventually you have to say, why am I taking this personally? This is that person's behavior. And I can either choose to stay and accept that person for who they are and what they're going to do, or I can separate myself because it's not good for me.
Exactly.
And so I think we've had a lot of success using that in the last several years as well.
That's great. All right, let's do a 180 here, and let's talk a bit about being feminine in the workplace, because that was the other big question you had. So lay it on me. What's the big, how do you want to frame that question, and then I can address that as best as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. So especially another struggle as a single mom, obviously, is you're the provider. So you have to be able to do the work, and you can either work for other people. And yes, there are jobs that allow you to be very feminine, having to work the 9 to 5 job, and then sometimes up to 5 jobs at a time to make sure we were good. I chose to step out on my own and create my own business, but that is such a very masculine energy thing, because you have to be the one responsible, even when a client calls at random time, not necessarily always answering it, but taking care of the business, you know what I mean? And it's something that I find I intimidate a lot of guys that I tend to date and talk with, because I have my stuff together and I'm very ambitious and go-getting. And it's almost like if they, and I know this for myself, I know that I'm a strong person, so I need a man that is stronger than me, that I can trust to lead me, because then I revert back to, well, if he's not going to do it, I'll just get it done myself, And that's something that I struggle with, because it's like in my business, obviously I have to be the one to do that. But then turning it around and then dating and trying to be in a completely different mindset, it's almost like I feel like there's a way to better integrate it to where you can gravitate to one polarity or another. And maybe it's just in the relationships and, and with people outside of business, kind of, you could be more feminine. But I know for instance, a couple of years back, several years back, actually, I did in-home childcare. And because I was a single mom, when I would hear the single mom stories, I would not charge them as much, or I would let them go weeks without paying. And eventually that hurt my business, because I was being so empathetic to what it was, but I wasn't holding firm boundaries. And eventually one of my good paying jobs had called me back and offered me a great job. And I was like, okay, it's the time to move on. I was able to move out, obviously. But because I do tend to be more giving and forgiving, it's almost like I have to do that mentality. I'm in my workspace, I have to be on point here, when in reality, I'd rather just be, helpful and loving everybody,
So yeah, the business owner thing with women is really interesting, because obviously I have a limited sample pool, but I've actually found that many of the women who are the least successful in relationships are successful in businesses, right? And they're running really great businesses. And then they're completely lost when it comes to having a functional, loving relationship. And it's because so many of the skills that are required in business are extremely masculine, and often just that, entrepreneurial spirit and desire to move outward with a purpose is also quite masculine as well. So you've got so much of that masculine focus, and then how does that translate into a relationship? Well, it translates really badly. And then all of the tendencies that you develop as you get better as a business owner too, where you're able to handle so many things, and when there's something going wrong, you have that natural tendency to fix it. Well, it's all just going to sabotage a relationship, right? Because it's pretty much a complete opposite mindset and way of living, of just letting everything go, So really just letting all of that go and just operating on faith and believing that a man, that somebody else that's not you is going to want to take care of everything and step up in a really big way. The other problem for a lot of business owners is they're also usually quite competent at things, right? So they'll find men that are like, first of all, because women that are business owners are more masculine, they're going to tend to attract more feminine men. But then on top of it, they're so competent, and it's hard to find a man who's more competent at making decisions, at leading, doing all of that stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So that's why I think a lot of the clients that I actually end up finding are business owners, because they need the most help in that. It's a big step back of being able to let go of control and letting a man lead, even if, you know, his decisions you're perceiving like those aren't going to be very good decisions. He's going to be potentially incompetent with some things, right? So it's a lot of trust that's required, because you're masculine, like a business owner, like a woman business owner's masculine is so well developed, so competent. But one thing that I have found just from my experience with, this isn't specifically with business, but working with women, I've worked in various fields, is I have, even like working with bosses, I've worked with really feminine bosses where I have, as a man, like they aren't telling me to do anything, but they're just so feminine and they don't even have to express their feelings anyway. Like I can feel it. And I'm just like, I just want to do the best for this woman, right? I just want to take care of her. It's an interesting dynamic, because just like having your children that are younger than you and you're taking care of them, but they can actually step up in a big way to want to take care of your heart. Especially the boys. And it's the same kind of thing, even if you're a boss, an employer, where men will want to step up and serve a feminine boss. And this is a bit of a mind shift for a lot of women that don't realize that's possible, because I'm sure they also see kind of doormat feminine women that get steamrolled in the workplace too, right? It's like no boundaries and just let everything go. But women that are really radiant and you can feel their self-worth, but it's all through their feminine energy. It's like, I just want to serve you. I just want to take care of you and do things for you. Even though you're technically in a higher position than me, I can feel that feeling of like, I want to serve you as a man, essentially leading, even though you are technically my boss. So that's really, really interesting that's possible. That it's a rare situation. I haven't met many women in that position, but I really think that for women that are going to be in the workplace and our bosses, it is the most sane way forward, because you got two options. One is to stress yourself the hell out and probably just not want to do whatever you're doing after 5-10 years, because it's not fun. But then second of all, because of the way that men are programmed, if the more masculine a woman is as a boss, the more annoying and grating it is to work for her, right? Because a man literally feels like a slave. Even, we're getting a wage for it, but it's like, this is just terrible. I feel like a little bitch, just like with a woman partner. And so there's a major potential shift that's possible in the workplace, in like women-led businesses, all that kind of stuff. Also then parenting with women, where it is really possible to move into radiant feminine energy. And it requires opening up, for a lot of women, opening up the realization that this is even possible, that women don't need to stay in their masculine to get all of this stuff done.
Right. And I would love to see that in action in my own life. I've had the pleasure of having a few women bosses, and one I can think of that I worked for at the elementary school, and I was their office manager. And she was one of those tiny women that just ruled with such an air of peace and calming, but she didn't have to even really punish people or give them hard consequences. Just a look and just something that would shut it down immediately. I just seen people just stop talking just because she kind of gave them a look like, I don't think that's the right thing. You know, it was very humbling to see, and I respect her leadership very much. And I do try to do that in a lot of ways but my problem is either becoming a pushover or then becoming that so frustrated, so resentful that I finally snap. And then it's like, oh, well, she just can't handle this or whatever. Thankfully, in my business now, I'm the single owner, and I do a small tax preparation business. So I haven't made it bigger just because I am very particular about privacy and data, and I have to be able to trust certain things. I just haven't got to that point yet. But ultimately, with client relationships and such, that's where it's been hard to kind of either be in either the feminine or the masculine, you know, and trying to find the good balance that makes it successful, but also leaves me in my feminine.
Mm-hmm. I've got a question about that woman giving that look that you're referring to. Yeah. Would you say that look was with masculine energy or with feminine energy?
I would say it was very feminine. It was almost as if, best way I could describe it is if you knew you were doing something stupid and your mom just gave you a look like, come on now, you know. And it was just almost, you knowing, not a don't do that or a hard look, you know what I mean? It was just kind of a knowing motherly look almost.
So that actually sounds masculine to me.
Does it? Okay.
Because are you referring to it's a judgment? Like she's not saying it. I don't mean being judgmental, but she's essentially energetically making a judgment on the situation. Would that be accurate?
I would say so. I think it would be, to me, the way I felt was that she was almost saddened or confused that was even brought up.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. If there's feeling there, if you can feel her heart in that look, right, then that's going to be feminine, right? If it's more of that presence where it's like that judgment, like this is not cool, right? I've certainly given that look to kids all the time. Then that would be even though a mother could give that, that's actually energetically masculine. But yeah, it's when you can feel her heart, right? It's like, oh, this is hurting her, and I don't want to do that, right? Like that would be how that would be received from a child or from a male employee or whatever it is. That's where it's like it's inspiring them to step up and serve. And if they're being irresponsible or lazy or whatever it is, they, if they are heart open in any way as a man, they will want to check themselves and do better because they don't want to make a woman that they care about and have empathy for. They don't want to hurt her.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. I will say someone brought back when you say, that I'll tell kids this, that, and the other. That's something that me and a lot of my girlfriends will joke about when we're with our children, having play dates. And it's like, we can say something a million times, but it's like when daddy comes in, it's like they straighten up and everything is done, So it's a totally, you could see the polarity, especially as a parent, having both sides. And that's where I think it's especially challenging when you're a single parent trying to do both. But I think the wisdom is that you don't do both, For years, I was always told Happy Father's Day. And it kind of was one of those things that was abrasive when I heard it, And at first I was like, oh, yeah, I am the daddy, too. But there was a constant knowing of you can't be daddy, too. Like, that's just literally not possible. And when you try, you're overcompensating, and it gets felt. It gets understood. You know what I mean? And it's something that I don't aspire to be. I don't aspire to be both. But it's almost like in times when push comes to shove, then my masculine comes out and it's like, okay, let's get her done.
Yeah, and it's certainly more difficult with kids because they are less responsible, hopefully, than a man, right? Like you would at least hope that a man that's in his 20s or 30s is more responsible than a 10-year-old child. So it can be harder in some ways to first of all trust that they're going to want to be responsible, and then actually them being responsible. So it is a really interesting challenge, but that is certainly what I've seen from clients is that, you know, it's you don't have to go, for the most part, go back and forth. If you can really just embody your radiant feminine, which is much different than the doormat feminine, then children are going to really respond quite well to it. And that answers it says Facebook users question, how does that relate to single moms? It's like, I don't know when you tuned in, but we did talk a bunch about single moms earlier in the call, because kids are just can be so capable if you just learn to trust them. They really can. I'll just finish this. I'm just gonna speak from just share a little bit more as a past camp counselor. I've done so much work as a camp counselor, and I was that one counselor that just had so much trust for children. Like, I don't know why I did. I don't know why it was so different, while other counselors were just yelling at kids and trying to keep them in control and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't like that. I just really believed that if I just gave them responsibilities and trusted them, like truly trusted them. And this is as a man, right? Because this is masculine energy, but it's masculine trust. So it's different than what a feminine woman, a mother, would be doing potentially if she wanted to be in her feminine. But I would just fully trust them and tell them, like, these are the expectations. And then I would stop trying to I'd stop trying to control them. I just let them make their own mistakes. Now, they would know when they were wrong, and I would ask them questions about how they were wrong. But I would a lot of it was just logical consequences, right? It's like, oh, you didn't set up your tent in time. Well, guess what? Now you have to set it up in the dark.
Right.
Have fun with that. They learn pretty fast when they make these kind of mistakes. And I wouldn't be judgmental about it. I'd just be like, okay, well, now you have to set up your tent in the dark. Yeah. They're the best. And that's what it makes it so much easier, right? Because I would see these counselors that are so stressed out all the time, like males and females. They're so stressed. And I'm like, I'm just chilling. Eating my burgers that I cooked, and the kids they're cooking their own burgers and they're doing everything, and they're just as good as other counselors after. Like, they were useless when they first started a camping trip, but by the end, they're amazing. It's like I would have wanted them as a co-counselor, as my partner, because they're just so competent and good at leading themselves and leading the other children. But it requires really stepping back, letting them make tons of mistakes, making them look like complete idiots with how incompetent they are and useless. But they learn fast. They will learn really fast, especially when they have the motivation to do so, because, you know, mommy or daddy isn't going to come and save the day. You're going to figure it out yourself. Yeah. So that's I went over time again. That's how I want to end it. So thank you very much, Cassandra, for coming on and talking about this. This is a fantastic topic. I know there's a lot, especially single mothers out there, that really, you know, I think this work can really, really help if they learn to embody it. And it's going to also really help them attract a man that's going to make things a lot easier as well. So keep working on polarizing yourself. All the women out there, all the mothers. Thanks for tuning in. You're welcome.